obviously I called you after the championship game and had a lot of concerns with the way that Fields was playing. But I just have to say this, and I'm going to say this to Pete as well. Bottom line for the Buckeyes to win, and he has to play well. I mean, I think that goes without saying. Now, and I would say this, if he's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft, which is what the Kuipers and the McShays and all those folks are saying, he can't close out his career with 2 bad games in a row. I don't know how you can justify being a top 5 pick in the draft or a top 2, 3 in the pick in the draft if you put together 2 bad games in a row. I mean, is that a fair statement?
Well, I don't think it's fair or unfair. It's the selection of an NFL team to make that whether they believe that they can match his talent and aptitude for learning and developing with their coaching ability to make him the player he needs to be. There are all sorts of superstar players in collegiate football that aren't deemed to be players at the next level. Therefore, they get drafted in the 5th or 6th round, while there are other guys who accomplished very little at the collegiate level that still get drafted in the 1st round because of that portion of it. I heard Trent Dilfer say today on the Kellen Cowherd show that there was a razor's difference between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. When Cowherd was setting him up to say, isn't Trevor Lawrence a much better pro prospect than Justin Fields? And by Trent Dilfer's evaluation, no, not the case.
Wow. Bottom line, Mark, I just don't think he can close out his Buckeye career with 2 really bad games in a row, and I just don't see how that's a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And I know I'm being harsh on him here, but, I mean, obviously in the back of my mind, I know he's going to have to play well for us to win. I mean, it's one thing if he plays really well and they lose a 38-35 shootout, then, I mean, that's a different thing altogether. But if, he doesn't play well for back-to-back games, I just don't know. To me, that doesn't bode well for a future top 5 pick. Because in many ways, these great quarterbacks are going to be judged against the better competition that they play. Bottom line.
I understand what you're saying, but there is going to be some distance removed from the time that he underperforms in a playoff game and the draft at the end of April. Now that's going to be the tape, and that's going to be, to your point, the most important aspect of his resume, the most relevant, but there's going to be the workouts, the combine, all of that, and he still has a lot of impressive tape. And again, it's the most important position on the field, and teams are looking for that guy, the franchise quarterback, and they're willing to reach for that guy. And of course, it only takes one team. If 31 teams don't believe he's a 1st-round quarterback, and I know you're not knocking him all the way out of the 1st round,
right?
But to further the point, if it's a hypothetical on a borderline 1st-round guy, that maybe 30 teams say, or 31 teams say he's a 3rd rounder, but it just takes the one team that needs a quarterback to say this guy's a 1st rounder, or he's a top 10 player to pull the trigger and make him that.
Sure. Well, I mean, certain quarterbacks are aided by the big games. I mean, obviously, Vince Young made a lot of money in that Rose Bowl that night against USC. We all know that. I think Deshaun Watson made a lot of money off of those performances against Alabama in those championship games. So, I think that's a factor. Although I must say this, Justin Herbert played, I thought, very, very poorly in big games last year, and so far he's looked really good in the NFL. So, sometimes you can never tell, maybe. So,
I agree with that. After watching Justin Herbert against the better teams in the Pac-12 and then watching his Rose Bowl performance, even though they won the game,
right.
As I recall, Oregon did not surpass 200 yards of total offense until the final drive of the game against Wisconsin. They got shut down. They had gift touchdowns. They did not outplay Wisconsin, and I thought, has he really looked good in this game? I was not impressed with Justin Herbert. He just looked like another college quarterback to me, but he's proving otherwise at the next level.
Yeah, in the three biggest games, Mark, I saw, because I thought he looked terrible against Auburn early in the year, or at least fairly pedestrian in their opening game against the Auburn last year, who had a better defense. So